Mr. Greenberg, Steve, I see you here. Are you there? You are. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. There's no thunderstorms. We're good. No high winds today.
Oh, that was crazy. The last time I was on a Zoom with you, there was a blackout, and because
Yeah, we ended up spending 7 days away. It was crazy. It's like I lost power an hour after you did.
it was something.
So I have to say thank you because you may not know this, but you're partly the inspiration why I am doing this. Because the whole idea of Grafton Street TV was a platform to help discover buskers. And then what do you do once you discover the magic is you create, of course, a magical, mystical cafe with a small PA, a small stage, some slightly uncomfortable wooden seats where everyone who sits down gets a front row seat. We get to listen to raw live music. And so that's what we're doing. This is the second episode of the show. I call it Jeff's Place Humbly. It is a micro mini, I don't know, micro mini live Earth. I don't know. We have folks here from Ireland, folks here from the States, and guests from all over the world, spanning 12 time zones. And I remember you telling me about the art of busking. I should introduce you. I don't know how to introduce you the proper way. I don't, besides being in music most of your life and being one of the most influential people I know in the industry and helping to define genres of music. You're also just a wonderful human being, and you're a friend. So thank you for
Well,
being
I'm
here.
happy to be here. I'm always happy to do any of your events, Jeff. They're always great. You always have great people.
And so what does busking mean to you?
Busking is just one of those great ways that you can eliminate all the middlemen, all the gatekeepers, and take your music straight to the people and let the people be the judge. And busking can lead to a career sometimes, or other times it just can lead to just being able to express yourself in a way that's meaningful and get that music out that you've been writing and get people to hear it and bring a smile to their face or move them in some way. And that's also good.
And so I mentioned busking and Third Street Promenade because I think that's how you found Andy Grammer, or
Well, yeah,
partly.
actually, it was Andy Grammer's manager Ben Singer who found him busking,
Oh, okay.
and Andy Grammer actually has a great story because he had been busking for quite a while on the Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica, and he one day had a very frustrating day. He actually failed to earn any money that day. He busked all day and came home with not a penny for his efforts. And he came home and he was frustrated, but decided he wasn't going to give up and that he was going to continue on. And he decided to write a song to inspire himself to not give up. And the song was called Keep Your Head Up. And it became his first big hit. It was a platinum record and a very big hit.
And
And,
thank you for having me in the video.
and Jeff Pulver was indeed in the video. And it changed his life, but he wrote a song about busking and it actually became his big hit, which is a pretty cool story. And then his manager, Ben Singer, found him sometime after that and heard him singing on the promenade and thought he was great and decided to sign him to a management deal. And then they brought him to me and signed him to me for a record deal. So that's a great busking story. I work with another band that did a lot of busking in their lives, and that was AJR.
Yes,
Currently have
the three Busketeers.
Yes, and they used to busk in Washington Square Park all the time, and even in Central Park, but mostly in Washington Square Park. And they didn't get discovered busking, but they used the money that they made busking to buy all of their equipment. So they bought recording equipment, they bought instruments, they bought all the things they needed to go and make their music and to make recorded music and to release music on their own. So they actually started themselves off in the recorded music industry by busking and making some money that way.
Wow, and so we have a few buskers that are here performing for all of us today. What are do you have words of encouragement? How would you? What
Yeah,
would?
I mean, anything you can do to play your music in front of real people is always great. I mean, that's people are always spending their time, sending demo music to record industry people and stuff, and that's good and it could work. It's kind of needle in a haystack, but it could work. But playing in front of people, you get to, like I said, express yourself. B, you get to put a smile on somebody else's face. C, you get to become much better at what you do. The only way to become a great live performer is by performing live a lot in front of people. So especially in today's world where like there are no gigs anymore at the moment in clubs, You've got to play a lot of shows to get good. Nobody gets good without playing a lot of shows. It just doesn't happen. So busk all you want because it'll get you better and it'll make you much more prepared for that moment when you are going to have to be amazing to impress somebody and get your big break. So definitely there's no downside to playing, shows that make you a better musician. So I think it, yeah, and I think, and then the fourth thing is that who knows? You never know. Maybe you do get discovered busking, or maybe you just write a great song about busking that becomes your first hit.
It can happen. And so in 2020, how has the change in the music industry affected you? I know with AJR, they managed one live drive-in concert so far in the Philly area. But like someone like you who is a consummate A&R person, one of the best in the world, how do you, if there are no live gigs to go out, what are you doing to find talent? How do you, what do you do?
It's so hard because I'll come across a young artist and I'll just wish that I could see them perform live. Like it's so weird to try to make decisions about getting involved in the career of a new artist without knowing if they're good live, but that's kind of where we're at right now. I've had people perform for me on Zoom, but it's not the same, to be honest. It's really hard for that same level of connection to be made. It's good. It's a great way to find out if somebody has a good song, for instance, but it's hard to make that real connection and know that person's got the thing,
How many artists do you currently have at S-Curve these days?
Ooh, I don't know. I never count, but I would say we have about 10.
Wow.
We have Andy Grammer, we have AJR, we have Leslie Odom Jr., who is in Hamilton, who's great. We have Roz.
Haley?
We have We the Kings. We have the OJs. We have Joshua Henry, who is another big Broadway star, who's about to put out his first pop album, and all kinds of other amazing artists. I'm worried if I try to name them all, I'll miss somebody, and then somebody will feel dissed. So I'd rather just say we have other great artists.
So I don't know if you were watching Colbert a couple of weeks ago, but he made reference to the year 2000 and Who Let the Dogs Out. I was just wondering, do people still hit you up about that?
People hit me up about that all the time. It's one of those ones that no matter how old or young you are, you seem to know that song, which is kind of cool to have one of those songs where everybody just knows it.
But you're the one barking.
I am the one barking on the song. Yeah, that is absolutely true. And look, the song lives on. It'll probably outlive me. And that's good. That's pretty cool if you could make something
when you guys were doing those stadium performances, like at Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium and stuff, were you barking at that point, or they had it on?
No, I was not barking on at the World Series. That was the band, but I am barking on the record. It's the 20th anniversary of Who Let the Dogs Out, by the way.
Really
exciting, yeah. And what's pretty great, what I like about it the most, is that there are all these kids out there who are 12, and they were born 8 years after the record came out, but they all know the song. And that's a kind of a cool thing that and anywhere you go in the world, you could find, kids and they all know the song. So it was a nice moment in my life. And it's luckily one of those moments where it continually, I continually get reminded of it. And it's very sweet.
And the other thing I'll remind you of you being a podcaster and the speed of sound. What have you learned more? Have you learned anything about music, doing a podcast and being that consummate storyteller in those stories?
Well, yeah, first of all, I do a podcast called Speed of Sound, and the whole first season is now up wherever you get your podcasts, you can get it. And there are 12 episodes, and it's all about how pop music phenomena occur. One of them actually is about how did Who Let the Dogs Out become as big as it got. But there are episodes about 90s teen pop where I talk about groups like Hanson and the Backstreet Boys and the Spice Girls. And there's a great 2-part episode about the Twist, which might have been actually the biggest musical phenomenon of the 20th century, and it's a really fascinating story that most people don't know a lot about. But yeah, I mean, you learn a lot when you do anything. I think when I did the podcast, I learned most of all from talking to artists, interviewing artists, because you interview artists and you just realize that the journey that they went on is very different than the journey that the audience went on. And what they think is important is sometimes different than what the audience remembers or took from the experience of their music. So I think you just realize at the end of the day, you listen to all these artists talk, and you realize they're all just people who are living their life, and ultimately it's their life story. and we hear the music and we all have a shared experience of their music, while generally the artist has their own actually completely different experience because they're actually living their life and making the music, and it's just a completely different equation.
Well, I have to say thank you for another reason is when after you gave that talk about how the Beatles went viral in '64, which was very wonderfully received, my family, we sat down and we watched That Thing You Do.
Uh-huh.
And I had a much better appreciation for the phenomena of the transistor radio and how in the movie even it was a plot line that they heard their song playing on the radio through the transistor radios. And I believe a late friend of yours was the one involved with that song. He was because he was from Fountains of
Yeah,
Wayne.
one of the great artists on S Curve Records, Adam Schlesinger, who was one of the leaders of the group Fountains of Wayne, wrote the song "That Thing You Do," and was nominated for an Oscar for it. Actually,
And
we unfortunately lost him in the spring to COVID, which was very sad.
oh yeah, it
And
was.
we miss him. It's been actually been a tough year for the label because we lost Adam and we also lost another great artist, writer, singer, producer named Betty Wright, who
Oh
produced so many of our great records, including the great Joss Stone records. And she died of cancer in the spring. So, I know everyone's had a tough year, and our label is no exception.
well, we were Adam was a topic of conversation on my show a few weeks ago because we had one of the folks who's been at Saturday Night Live for 29 years, who's responsible for the live shows, and I was asking him about who he ran into backstage and who he remembered, and he spoke about meeting Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks just came out and said that one of the most fun he's ever had is Making That Thing You Do. That was
Yeah, it's like,
one of his favorite movies.
I just saw it on TV the other night. It just was on, randomly, and I kind of watched it. And it's a great movie, and it actually does really capture something essential about being a young band and making it in the music business and having that hit.
So there's some young artists listening and playing today and watching right now. Besides going out and which, at least there will be a time soon that people will go out again and busk and be heard. But people who know it, they feel it in their blood that this is what they want to do. Do you have any direction, any other than continuing doing what they do? Is there anything different now that they need to do to get the attention or to?
The biggest change in the last few years in the music business is that, and I think it's an unfortunate change because it kind of skews what kind of people get a shot. But I think these days it's more important than it ever was to be your own best marketing manager. I think that artists these days, before they're ever signed by a record label, before they ever have a hit or anything, they need to market themselves, primarily through social media, and in order to drive interest on the DSPs. And it is really hard these days for a young artist to just show up and be talented and get discovered and get signed by a record label. It does still happen, but it's increasingly rare. Unfortunately, I prefer that world where, like, if you were just great, we'd sign you to a deal and we'd figure out how to introduce you to the world. Unfortunately, the way that business works right now is that almost everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody who's being signed has something going on, meaning they've got great numbers on social media. They've got some great numbers on a song that's out on Spotify. A piece of their song just blew up on TikTok. And a lot of that is luck. I mean, TikTok, especially, I feel like there's an amazing amount of luck that's involved in that. But social media is something that people roll up their sleeves and they work really hard at it. And I will say that if you're an artist out there right now on this Zoom and you think you're great, and you want to get a record deal, like, just know that you're going to have a way easier time if you can, like, show up with some numbers. And that's a horrible thing for me to have to say, because I never used to say that, and it breaks my heart in a way, because I don't necessarily think that the best marketers are the people who should be making records. But that kind of is where the business has gone. So, like I said, if you're great, get your great music out to other people, because if it's as great as you hope it is, other people will probably react to it, and you'll start building up a following, and you'll start, having some data, which some music company will notice, and that'll help you.
So just to wrap up, I saw news today that in Billboard that Bruce Springsteen was the first artist to chart. I think his new album's number 2 this week, and so he was the first artist to have a top 5 album for 6 decades, which
Yes, starting in the 70s. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing run, actually, isn't it?
it's crazy. And it's like, yeah. So Bruce has his own stories, and I found it fascinating that the week that his new album dropped, Tom Petty came out with a new album, considering that, and it was 27 years in the making, and it had a re-recording of some of his older stuff, but there were some new singles that came out, and I
Right.
felt like I'm reliving the 80s or the 70s.
Artists do last a lot longer these days in the music business than they used to. You know, in the old days, like a 10-year career was a long career. 20 years was amazing. You know, now you have these people. You know, U2 has a 40-year career. You know, and the
And
Stones have a 56-year career. You know,
well, I think the Beatles will live on forever. No, it's
yeah, but the Beatles aren't still making records, right? The Rolling Stones.
I only wish. I only wish.
And
But
I would imagine that Paul McCartney will put something out one day and it'll be a top 5 record album, and then he'll be, 7 decades or something.
it's amazing thing. I was amazed. I believe you told me that you were on the road with Bon Jovi in the 80s. Is that true?
In the 90s, not
In the
in
90s.
the 80s. Yeah, in the 80s, I wasn't in the music business yet, but in the
No, you did Voice of Peace. You did
I was a DJ on a pirate radio station called The Voice of Peace, which broadcast from a ship in the Mediterranean when I was very young. That was really fun. But Bon Jovi, yeah, I traveled the world with Bon Jovi, which was pretty crazy.
Wow. But was it fun also?
Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's always fun to get to travel the world,
Yeah.
somebody else's dime. It's really good.
Amazing. Steve, I thank you for being here. Thank you for being an inspiration.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to do one of your events, Jeff. And
well, this is
this is a great idea. I think you've come up with a really good idea. So I hope it's really, really successful.
It's growing. This is the second episode, and we do have a global audience, and it's for me, it's a comfortable place. Again, it's make believe, but I'm imagining a stage in front of us. Everyone who comes here has a front row seat. It's slightly uncomfortable wooden chairs. The PA is not too sophisticated. All we have is 4 channels on it, and people could bring their mic and maybe a keyboard or a guitar, and we just listen. And so
I was like lurking in the background for some of the earlier performances, so maybe I'll still keep lurking. So I look forward if there are more performances.
Oh, we got more performances. Okay. Well, thank you.
So hey, everybody, have a great day. Thank you so much for showing up for this, and we love you, Jeff.
Love you, Steve.
If you can hang on 1 second, Rosie has a question for you.
I just have a good question. When you say like people need numbers, like what kind of numbers are you talking? Like, is it over 10,000, or does it really matter as long as you've got a small following?
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it's about how active the following is. When record labels are looking at things that are blowing up on some platform, a lot of it is just about like the velocity. How fast is something happening? How fast is the person gaining followers? How fast is the song getting streams? So I wish I could give you a number, and I'm sad that I can't.
Yeah.
But I can't. But I guess what I'm saying is that, like, try to have like life online. You know what I mean? Try to be an artist whose social media presence has a pulse. That there are some people out there who really do care about you on social media or on Spotify or on SoundCloud or wherever it is that you're choosing to communicate.
Makes sense.
I'll take other questions, Jeff, if you want.
Oh, okay. Well, Lauren, I'm not looking. Anyone else have any questions here while we have Steve?
So that was great.
I'm going to say that, and no one's going to have a question. I'm going to feel dumb.
Oh no, they have questions. Let me just see. Anybody? You know what? How about we go to our artists? My artist. Anybody have a question? Jess?
We're looking.
We're looking.
I think Jessica's being shy, but has a question.
Okay, but Stephanie's ready.
All right, Stephanie, go ahead.
What would you say? So Jeff mentioned there's a lot of young artists on here. I'm a different kind of young. I'm a 42-year-old young. So what would you say to somebody who's getting started a little bit later in life when it comes to making it, so to speak?
Well, I think very often it's good to think about like who your audience is. And sometimes it's good to like imagine an audience that's a little bit more like you are. And I don't know anything about your music, so I can't speak to it. But I think that, the same way that it's unrealistic to think that 13-year-old artists are going to appeal a lot to people in their 40s. I think it's probably more challenging for a 40-year-old artist to appeal to 13-year-olds. But there's lots of 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds and older 50-year-olds out there to appeal to. So I would say like try to figure out where those people live online. You know what I mean? I think that we're always focused on social media that's very youth centric. It's all, you know, aimed around, you know, around high school kids and stuff. But the truth is that like all the social media platforms at this point have gotten huge adoption from older users. And so there's definitely an audience out there that's not, you know, not high school kids, that's on everything, including TikTok. So if there's a way to kind of define those people and speak to them in a way that's meaningful, I think that's a way to, you know, and by the way, I don't know that anybody's actually blown up really in that way yet, you know, where they were like blowing up on social media, but it was a less of a like a teenage crowd, you know. So I would say that's an interesting approach to it, but just know who you want your audience to be.
Okay.
And then speak to them. Have you performed on this today?
She will. She will.
She's after. She's coming.
Yeah.
I'll probably be lurking. So you know.
Okay, good.
Do any of my other artists have a question? Because if not, there's 2 questions in the chat.
All right.
Somebody's raising their hand.
Okay, well, that's Andrea. We'll get to Andrea in a second. We have a question from Brian. He would like to know how A&R has changed in the social and digital age.
Well, it's less about strolling into a club and discovering a band, and it's more about hearing about a band online, whether it's social media or whether it's through Spotify or wherever it is. So it's more about finding out about stuff digitally first, and then hopefully checking the artist out, getting all their music, and then finally checking them out live. And in the old days, there was a lot more of that, like the first time you encountered the artist, it was in a live setting. And even before COVID, that wasn't really the case anymore. So that was the biggest difference.
Well, okay, we have time for 2 more questions, Jeff?
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
Lucas just wants to know, when you were starting your career, what was the most important thing you were taught?
Oh, wow.
I think the most important thing that I learned early on is that you should look for artists who are unique, not just talented, but unique, and not try to copy what's on the radio or what's popular at the moment, but find somebody who really doesn't sound like anything else that's out there. And if you love it, have the strength of your convictions that says, if I love it, I really believe that I can get the whole world to love it if I can get them to hear it. That's the most important thing I learned.
Thank you. All right, Lauren, one more if we have time. Otherwise, we should really go.
Okay, well, Andrea just asked about promoting on Spotify. So
that's a tough one. You know, it's really hard to promote on Spotify. The best, you know, again, like everything else, try to make some noise on social media to drive people to Spotify. I would say that I would be very wary about companies that charge you money and say that they can get you on playlists. Sometimes that even can backfire, because some of those companies, I'm sure some of them are fine, but some of them are not that reputable, and they'll have fake accounts, fake users to drive up their numbers. And the truth is that Spotify pretty much knows who the fake users are. So if they see that your music is mostly being listened to by bots, they actually hold it against you as opposed to giving you a leg up. So that's the biggest thing, is don't fall for the ability of companies to get you on playlists. Go for little tiny what I would say is that there are lots and lots of really tiny playlists out there that are just run by individuals, you know, not the ones that are curated by Spotify, but ones that just, you know, somebody, it could be somebody who's a blogger, or somebody who has a little zine, or just somebody who's an individual who has a playlist, and they have small amounts of followers. Maybe they just have 100 followers or whatever, but you know, those people tend to be more open to submissions and to get your stuff on it. And to be honest, the best way to build up a track record on Spotify is to get the music heard by somebody. So it could be a playlist with 100 people, and then hopefully it will perform well on that playlist, meaning the people who hear the music on that playlist will play it again. Spotify knows that if people play it again, they'll put it in their collection, right? Into their own playlist. And Spotify knows that too. If you take a song off of a playlist and you put it in your own collection on Spotify, they know you did that. right? So, or how about share it, right? Let's say somebody hears your song on a playlist and they share it with their friend. They copy the link and they post it, or they do share it in any number of ways, right? Spotify knows that too. So that all that stuff goes into the algorithm. So even though you're not on a massive playlist with thousands or millions of followers, all that data does start to add up if your record is performing well. And you can use that to graduate to bigger playlists, you know? And so that's what I would say is like no playlist is too small to get on. And you should go out and find the people who curate those playlists. You know, all their names are on there on Spotify, you know, curated by whoever it is. And very often those people are easily findable, you know, through the usual means of finding people online. And you can reach out to them and say, hey, can I send you a song? And a lot of those people will say, sure. Especially if your song is the right kind of music that fits what they're doing on their playlist. So that's my biggest piece of advice.
Well, thank you, Steve. On behalf of everybody, thank you for being here, sharing your wisdom with us, and for listening. I'm grateful to know you and grateful to hang out. This is beautiful. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.